I can wear whatever I want and dance with whoever I want, she shouted in the club. The next morning, she found a note on the door. Then go live wherever you want. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who ends up writing on Reddit, but here I am, sitting in my half-empty apartment, telling strangers about the moment my life cracked open like a dropped glass. It all started last Friday night, or technically very early Saturday morning. But the moment that keeps replaying in my head like a broken video clip happened around 1:47 a.m. inside a club that smelled like cheap perfume, spilled cocktails, and the kind of sweat that only appears when people are desperately trying to impress each other. My girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, I guess, stood in the middle of the dance floor, glitter on her eyelids, and the kind of energy that makes people turn their heads without even knowing why. The music was too loud to think straight, a heavy bass thumping like a second heartbeat, but somehow I still heard her voice cut through it. I can wear whatever I want and dance with whoever I want, she yelled at me. It wasn't the words. It was the tone. That mix of frustration, defiance, and something else, something I still can't name. Something that made my stomach drop. People around us looked, then looked away. Drama in a club is entertainment only until it becomes too real. I remember raising my hands, not to argue, but to calm her down. I'm not trying to control you, I shouted back. But she had already turned away, her hair flipping dramatically over her shoulder as she moved back into the flashing lights, where strangers' hands were too eager and her boundaries too blurred by alcohol and adrenaline. I should have followed her. I should have left. I should have done something other than freeze like an idiot with my heart halfway up my throat. But instead, I watched. And that's the part I'm still ashamed of. I watched her dance with strangers, two guys, then another, then a girl who kissed her cheek in a way that was definitely not friendly. I watched her lose herself in the beat, her body saying things I knew she didn't mean, at least not when she was sober. At some point, I walked out of the club. I don't even remember making the decision. I just blinked, and suddenly I was outside, in the cold night air, where everything smelled like cigarettes and regret. I sat on the curb, scrolling through messages I'd never sent, trying to figure out how something that had felt so solid just hours before could suddenly feel like it was made of sand. I didn't sleep that night. Eventually, around dawn, I dragged myself home, hoping she'd be there already, asleep, or at least willing to talk like a normal human being instead of screaming over EDM. Instead, I walked into an empty apartment. No shoes by the door. No jacket tossed over the chair. No. Hey, we need to talk. Text waiting on my phone. Just silence. I tried calling her 3 times. Tried texting her twice. Tried convincing myself she had just stayed at a friend's place to cool off. I paced around the apartment until the sun was fully up, then finally collapsed on the couch. I didn't expect what came next. Around 9 a.m., I woke up to a weird scratching sound. At first, I thought it was in my dream, but then I realized it was coming from the front door. I got up slowly, still groggy, and when I opened the door, there was no one there. Just a note, a small, square piece of paper stuck onto the doormat. When I picked it up, I immediately recognized her handwriting, the dramatic loops, the little hearts she added unconsciously when she was emotional. It said, "Then live wherever you want." No explanation, no apology, no, "I'm angry," or "we're done," or even "let's talk later." Just that one sentence. Cold. Final. Like the aftermath of a slammed door. I stood there for at least a full minute, holding that note between my fingers, waiting for some kind of emotional reaction to hit. Anger. Sadness. Panic. Something. Instead, I felt numb. Not the kind of numbness that makes everything fade. More like everything hurt too much to process, so my mind wrapped itself in bubble wrap just to survive. I went back inside and sat at the table, staring at the note like it was a riddle I was supposed to solve. I tried reading it in different tones. Angry, sarcastic, heartbroken, but none of them fit her. None of them felt like the girl I'd fallen for. The girl who cried over stray cats and laughed so hard she snorted when I tickled her ribs. The girl who once told me I made her feel safe in a way that scares me. Where had that girl gone? I thought about going to her place. Thought about calling her again. Thought about writing a long, emotional message she would probably ignore. But instead, I sat there, frozen, waiting for something to make sense. The crazy thing is, I'm still not sure whether she meant the note literally, figuratively, or as some kind of emotional trap. Maybe it was revenge. Maybe it was anger. Maybe she genuinely didn't want to come home. Or maybe, and this possibility keeps chewing at me, maybe she wanted me to fight for her to prove that I cared enough to chase her. But how do you chase someone who disappears without trace? That's what part 2 is going to be about. How I try to find her. How things got messy, darker, and far more complicated than I ever expected. And trust me, the note was only the beginning. I spent the rest of that morning sitting at my kitchen table, staring at the note like it might catch fire if I looked away for too long. At some point, I realized I hadn't eaten, hadn't showered, hadn't even changed out of the clothes I'd worn to the club. I smelled like regret and cheap vodka, even though I hadn't been the one drinking. And still, I couldn't get myself to move. I kept replaying the night before, trying to figure out when things had turned. When had the argument actually started? Was it when I told her the dress was a bit too revealing? Was it when I asked who the guy she was dancing with was? Or had it been building for weeks, like a slow leak in a tire you don't notice until you're stranded on the side of the road? At around noon, my phone buzzed. My heart jumped so fast it hurt. But it wasn't her. It was her friend, Mia. A single message. Hey, are you okay? Nothing in the world sends adrenaline through your body like a message from the best friend to the person who just maybe broke up with you. I typed, deleted, retyped, deleted again. Finally, I just wrote, I don't know. Have you talked to her? She responded almost immediately. Not since last night. She left early. Looked upset. Upset? She was upset? I should have stopped right there. I should have asked Mia to tell her I loved her, or that I was sorry, or whatever normal people do in messy breakups. But instead, I felt this sudden, stupid urge to go find her. Maybe I thought the act of looking for her would outweigh whatever dumb things we'd said in the club. Maybe I thought romance was still like the movies. You run after someone, they cry, you hug, everything's fixed. Spoiler alert, real life isn't like that. I grabbed my keys and headed out. Her apartment building was on the other side of town, a tiny fourth-floor walk-up with terrible heating and neighbors who argued so loudly you could hear every detail. I'd helped her move in 6 months earlier. I knew that place like my own. When I got there, I buzzed her intercom. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. A guy smoking by the front door raised an eyebrow at me. If she's not answering, he said, blowing smoke upward, she probably doesn't want to talk. Yeah, I muttered. I got that. I went upstairs anyway. Somehow I remembered the building's front door code. Muscle memory of a relationship I wasn't sure still existed. Her door looked exactly the same as always. The little sticker of a sunflower, the slightly crooked number 4B. But something felt off. I knocked. No response. I knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. I don't know why, but I tried the handle. It turned. Her apartment wasn't empty, and that was the strangest part. The lights were off, but the curtains were open, sunlight spilling across the floor. Her shoes were by the entrance, but not the heels she'd worn to the club. The blanket on the couch was twisted like someone had slept under it, and her phone charger was plugged in next to the sofa. Her phone wasn't there, though. Hello. I called out quietly. Are you here? Silence. I walked deeper inside. The air felt heavy, like the room had been holding its breath. I noticed a glass on the table with lipstick on the rim. Her shade, the kind she always applied twice before going out. But then I saw something that made my stomach knot. Her bag. The same bag she'd taken to the club. It was sitting on the kitchen chair, which meant she'd come home after me, which meant she'd been here. So why wasn't she now? I called her name again, louder this time. Nothing. I checked the bedroom. The bed looked untouched. The closet doors were closed, but the edge of one sweater was sticking out like she'd pulled something in a hurry. I opened the closet and saw that a few of her things were missing. Not enough to mean she'd moved out, but enough to mean she'd left intentionally. Like she'd packed just enough to disappear for a few days. That realization hit me harder than I expected. She hadn't just stormed off. She'd planned her escape, or at least some version of it. I tried calling her again. Still nothing. I ran my hands through my hair, pacing the small apartment, trying to think of where she'd go. Her parents lived 2 hours away, but she hated going there. She wasn't close to her siblings. She didn't have a car. She couldn't have just vanished. But she did. Somehow she did. I sat on a couch, right where she must have sat earlier that morning, staring at the small living room like it might give me answers. What was she thinking? Why leave like that? Why leave me like that? My eyes landed on something near the TV, a folded piece of paper on the floor. Not a note, not addressed to me, just a receipt from a rideshare app. A ride, ordered at 7:14 a.m. Destination, drop off outside city. No exact address, just that vague phrase. Outside city. My chest tightened. She had left. She had actually left the city. But why? I took a picture of the receipt, slipped it into my pocket, and quickly left the apartment, locking the door behind me, even though it felt wrong to leave her place so empty. As I got back into my car, my phone buzzed again. A message from a number I didn't know. Just one sentence. Stop looking for her. No name. No explanation. Nothing. I stared at the screen, feeling that cold, sinking sensation again. The same one I'd felt when I found her note on my door. Someone knew I was searching. Someone didn't want me to find her. And that's when I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to consider. This wasn't just a relationship problem anymore. Something else was going on. Something I didn't understand. Something bigger than an argument in a club. Part 3. Well, that's when things really started to unravel. I sat in my car with the engine off, holding my phone like it was some kind of explosive device. Stop looking for her. That was all the message said. Short. Final. Like a verbal slap. At first I thought it might be her. Maybe she got a new number. Maybe she wanted space. Maybe last night had pushed us farther apart than I realized. But no, that didn't make sense. She wouldn't tell me to stop looking for her. If anything, she was the kind of person who wanted to be chased during a fight. She fed off emotional chaos the way some people live on caffeine. This message wasn't her style. The number didn't match anything in my contacts. No name, no profile photo, nothing to tie it to anyone. Just a cold, blank bubble on my screen. For a moment, I actually laughed. That kind of nervous, disbelieving laugh you make when the universe throws something at you that's too weird to process. But underneath the laugh was something else. Fear. Not fear for myself. Fear for her. I tried calling the number. It rang once, then cut off immediately, like someone had declined the call the second they saw who was on the other end. I tried again. Same thing. One ring. Click. Okay, I muttered to myself. So someone doesn't want me calling. Great. Fantastic. Normal relationships don't come with mystery warnings from unknown numbers and vague rideshare receipts saying outside city. I put my car in drive and headed home. I needed to think, really think, without the static of panic buzzing around my skull. The whole way back, I replayed everything. The club, the yelling, the stranger she danced with, the note on my door, her empty apartment, the receipt, the message. Nothing lined up. It felt like reading a story with the middle chapters ripped out. When I got home, the first thing I did was print the screenshot of the rideshare receipt and pin it onto the corkboard near my desk, the one where I normally kept reminders about bills and grocery lists. Suddenly, it looked like a crime investigation board. All I needed was red string to tie things together. I slumped into my chair and buried my face in my hands. I'm losing it, I whispered to myself. I'm actually losing it. My phone buzzed again. For a split second, my heart jumped. Maybe it was her this time. Maybe she'd explain everything. Maybe. No, it was Mia again. Did you find her? I hesitated before replying. No, but something's wrong. She responded. Wrong how? I almost told her everything, but something in my gut told me not to. Not yet. I didn't know what I was dealing with. I didn't know who I could trust. So instead I wrote. Her apartment was empty. I think she left for a few days. Mia sent a sad face emoji. Then, she's been stressed lately. Maybe she needed space. Maybe. But people who need space don't get into rideshares heading outside city before 7:30 a.m. They don't leave notes that sound like breakup haikus. They don't have strangers texting vague threats. I dropped my phone and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. I needed to do something, anything, before my mind imploded. Finally, I grabbed my laptop and opened a tab for the rideshare company. I couldn't access trip details without her login, but maybe support could help. I opened the chat window. Me. I'm trying to confirm a ride taken from her address this morning. I'm worried about the passenger's safety. It took a minute before someone responded. Agent, for privacy reasons, we cannot disclose passenger details. I clench my jaw. Me? I'm not asking for names. Just confirm the destination. Another long pause. Agent, we can confirm if a ride was completed or canceled. Would you like that information? Not helpful, but still something. Me, completed? Agent, yes. The ride was completed at 7:41 a.m. 7:41 a.m. That meant the trip was less than 30 minutes. Not exactly outside city in the dramatic sense, more like just beyond the suburbs. That actually made things worse. She hadn't run away to a different city. She hadn't gone to her parents. She hadn't gone far at all. She was close, very close, and still unreachable. I closed the chat and took a deep breath. Okay, so I had a radius now, roughly 30 minutes from her apartment. That was at least something to work with. I opened a map and stared at the suburbs around the city. Small neighborhoods, quiet roads, places you go when you don't want to be found but don't want to be far. I zoomed out. Forest motels, industrial areas, warehouses. Any one of them could be where she'd gone, or where she'd been taken. Stop it, I muttered to myself. Don't go there. Don't assume the worst. But the worst kept creeping in, crawling up the back of my mind, whispering that she didn't leave because of a fight, whispering that someone might have been with her, whispering that whoever sent that message wasn't trying to protect her. They were trying to hide something. I stood up and started pacing the room, my thoughts spiraling like water down a drain. I needed answers, and if she wasn't going to give them to me, I'd find them myself. I went back to the corkboard and stared at the receipt. 7:14 a.m. 30-minute ride. Outside city. I grabbed a stack of sticky notes and started listing every location in that radius. Motels, gas stations, shopping areas, anything. It felt stupid and obsessive, but it was all I had. That's when I heard something. A sound outside my apartment door. Not footsteps. Not knocking. A soft scrape. Like someone sliding something under the door. My heart stuttered. I walked slowly toward the entrance, every instinct screaming at me to stop. But curiosity won. There was an envelope on the floor. No name. No markings. Just a plain white envelope. My hand shook as I picked it up. It felt too light. Almost empty. I opened it carefully, half expecting something terrible inside. But there was only a small piece of paper. One sentence. You really don't know what she's capable of. I stared at the words until my vision blurred. This wasn't random. This wasn't accidental. Someone was targeting me, or warning me, or both. And whatever was happening, it wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. It was about truth, about danger, about something she had never told me. Part 4 is where I finally learned the truth, or at least the first layer of it. I stared at the sentence in the envelope until the letters stopped looking like English. You really don't know what she's capable of. The words felt like a cold hand gripping the back of my neck. At first, I thought it was some kind of cruel joke, maybe from someone who'd seen us argue at the club, maybe from one of her chaotic friends, maybe from some idiot trying to stir drama. But the handwriting was neat, controlled, not hers, not anyone's I recognized. And the message, it wasn't mocking, it wasn't angry, it was a warning, or a threat. I took the paper to my desk and laid it flat next to the printout of the rideshare receipt. 2 clues. 2 pieces of a puzzle I hadn't known existed 3 days ago. My mind spiraled in 100 directions. What was she capable of? Was this about her past? Some secret she never told me? Someone she'd been involved with before we met? I thought back to every moment that had felt odd, every time she'd shut down when I asked about her childhood, every restless night when she woke up shaking and refused to explain why. There had always been something under the surface with her, some shadow she never let me near. But I never thought it was dangerous. I sat on the couch, holding my head in my hands. I needed air. I needed clarity. I needed something. I stood up abruptly and grabbed my jacket. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but sitting in that apartment was making me feel like the walls were narrowing in. As soon as I opened the door, I froze. There was someone standing at the end of the hallway. A woman. Not her, but someone watching me. She was leaning casually against the wall, holding a phone, pretending to scroll. But when she saw me looking, she straightened and slipped the phone into her pocket. My heartbeat slammed against my ribs. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to sound more confident than I felt. She glanced at me, then at my door, then back at me. Maybe, she said softly. That voice. I'd heard it before. It took me a second, but then my stomach dropped. It was the bartender from the club. The woman who'd been working the count of the night. Everything fell apart. I swallowed. Do you know her? She nodded slightly. Not a big nod. More like she was acknowledging something neither of us wanted to say out loud. Where is she? I asked. Is she okay? Did something happen? The woman hesitated, like she was choosing her words carefully. She's not hurt, she said. Not yet. Not yet hit me like a punch. What does that mean? I stepped closer. Is she in danger? The woman exhaled, looking over her shoulder as if someone might be listening. You need to stop asking questions. That's not an answer. She rubbed her temples, frustrated. Look, I shouldn't even be here. But after what happened at the club, I figured you deserved at least something. My pulse quickened. Then, tell me the truth. She shook her head. Not here. Then where? She looked directly at me. Really looked, as if she were trying to judge whether I was strong enough to hear what she was about to say. Finally, she whispered. You weren't the only one watching her that night. Chills ran down my spine. What are you talking about? I said. Who else? Before I could finish, she stiffened. Footsteps echoed up the stairwell. Heavy ones. She immediately backed away from me. Forget this, she murmured. I shouldn't have come. Wait. I reached out, but she stepped out of reach. If you care about her, she said, don't go after her. Not now. Not alone. And with that, she strode down the hallway, past the corner, and disappeared. I stood frozen for several seconds, my breath stuck somewhere between my lungs and throat. Someone had watched her at the club. Someone had followed her. Someone had sent me that message. And this woman, the bartender, was scared of them. I shut my door quickly and leaned against it, trying to gather my thoughts. The warning only made me more determined. I wasn't going to sit around and wait for answers to magically appear. I pulled out my laptop and opened the map again. 30 minutes outside the city. Whoever took her, or convinced her to leave, hadn't gone far. And if someone was following me now, then they must have known I was getting close. I zoomed in on the map, scanning the area for anything unusual. Then I saw it, a place I'd almost forgotten existed. A half-abandoned industrial zone near the old railway tracks. Storage units, empty warehouses, a few businesses that never updated their websites. The kind of place where no one goes unless they have a reason. She mentioned it once, months ago, in passing. Something about delivering a painting for a friend and getting a bad vibe from the area. A chill ran through me. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, then stopped. The envelope. I almost left it on the table, but something told me to take it. I slipped it into my pocket and walked out. As I drove, every instinct in my body screamed that this was a terrible idea. The streets grew darker as the buildings spaced farther apart. The city noise faded until all I could hear was the hum of my engine. Eventually, I turned down a narrow road toward the industrial zone. Rusted fences, broken streetlights, empty parking lots, a graveyard of forgotten projects. My GPS crackled and suddenly lost signal. Of course, I drove slowly, scanning both sides of the street. Most buildings were locked up, windows boarded or filthy. But one warehouse had lights on, warm, yellow lights glowing through dusty glass. The only place with signs of life. Or danger. I parked a block away and got out, trying to quiet my steps on the gravel. The air smelled like metal and cold dust. As I got closer, I heard something. Not voices. Not machines. Music. Soft music. A song she used to play when she painted. Some indie track with haunting vocals she claimed helped her focus. My blood froze. She was here, or someone who knew her well enough to play that song. I stepped up to the warehouse door, heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. Before I could knock, I noticed something taped to the metal frame. A note. My breath caught in my throat. I tore it off and unfolded it with shaking hands. You should have listened. Nothing else. No signature. No explanation. Before I could react, I heard movement inside. A chair scraping. Footsteps approaching the door. I backed away, staring at the door as it began to open. And then, the chapter ends here. Part 5 is where everything finally unravels. where I learned the truth about her, about the people watching us, and about what she'd been hiding all along. The warehouse door creaked open with a long metallic groan that sliced straight down my spine. I stepped back instinctively, my breath held somewhere between fear and the faintest flicker of hope. A shadow filled the doorway, first tall, deliberate, not hers. Then another shape behind it, and then finally her. She stepped into the dim light slowly, like she wasn't sure if she wanted to be seen. Her hair was pulled back messily, her clothes wrinkled, and her eyes, God, her eyes looked like someone had drained all the color out of them. But she was alive. She was standing, and she wasn't alone. The man behind her placed a hand on her shoulder. Not aggressively, not possessively, more like he was grounding her, keeping her steady. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't cold. It was tired. So tired it made something inside my chest break. "I've been looking for you," I said. My voice cracked, humiliatingly soft. "You left without. You left." She looked away, jaw trembling. "I know." The man stepped forward slightly, and for the first time, I got a clear look at him. Average height, maybe mid-30s, wearing dark clothes that didn't quite look like they belonged anywhere. He had the kind of expression you'd see on someone who'd lived through things they never talked about. "You need to leave," he said. His tone wasn't threatening. If anything, he sounded resigned. "This doesn't involve you." "The hell it doesn't," I snapped. "She's my—" I stopped. I didn't know what word to use. Girlfriend? Ex? Stranger? Missing person? I hadn't known for days. She winced, like hearing me try to label her physically hurt. "I'm not here to fight," I said, turning back to her. "I just want the truth. Why did you leave? Who sent those messages? What's going on?" She opened her mouth, but the man touched her arm and she froze. That was it. That tiny gesture. That silent command. Something snapped inside me. "No," I said sharply. "She gets to speak. Not you." The man didn't look offended. If anything, he looked sad. "Tell him," he murmured to her. "He won't leave otherwise." She swallowed hard and finally looked at me fully, the first time she'd done that since the club. Her eyes were glistening in the weak warehouse light. "I wasn't running from you," she said. "I was running from myself." That made no sense, but the tremor in her voice was real. "I told you once," she continued, "that I used to get into trouble. Real trouble. The kind you can't just forget about." I felt my stomach twist. She had told me that, early in our relationship. A throwaway confession, a vague reference to bad people and worse decisions. But she'd laugh it off when I tried to ask more, and I let it go. "I shouldn't have. I didn't want you ever meeting them," she whispered. And then last night they recognized me. A cold wave washed over me. "The club," I breathed. She nodded. "They were there," the man said. "Watching her. They've been watching for a while." My jaw tightened. "Why?" "Because she owes them," he replied. "And they don't forget." She flinched again, and he softened his voice. "But she's trying to fix it." "I didn't want you pulled into this," she said, her voice breaking. "The note I left, it wasn't supposed to hurt you. I just thought if you got angry, if you pushed me away, you'd be safe." "I would have helped you," I said. "You didn't have to disappear." Her eyes filled with tears. "I know, but you're good. You don't know what I've done. And I couldn't drag you into something that dark." The man looked at her, then at me. "She came to us voluntarily, to settle things before they escalated." I frowned. "Us?" He nodded once. "I used to run with the same people she did. I know how to negotiate with them." "And the messages?" I asked. "The notes? The warning on my door?" "That wasn't me," he said. "And it wasn't her." A chill ran through me. "Then who?" "The people she's trying to repay," he said simply. "They wanted to scare you off." My throat tightened. "Why involve me at all?" "Because you care about her," he said. "And people like them take leverage where they can find it." My knees actually went weak. She rushed forward instinctively, catching my arm before I could stumble. Her touch, shaking, familiar, heartbreaking, nearly pulled a sob out of me. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "If they find you here—" "I don't care," I said, grabbing her hand tighter. "I'm not leaving you." She squeezed her eyes shut, a tear slipping down her cheek. "But I might have to leave you." Those words hit harder than any threat. The man stepped away, giving us space. He looked toward the dark corner of the warehouse, as if keeping watch. She stepped closer to me, her forehead resting against mine. I thought disappearing would protect you, but all I did was hurt you. You didn't hurt me, I said. You scared me. That's different. She let out a weak laugh, tears still falling. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I pulled her into my arms. She collapsed against me like she'd been waiting for that moment, shaking softly. I held on to her, terrified that if I loosened my grip even slightly, she'd vanish again. We'll fix this, I whispered into her hair. Together. She shook her head. It's not that simple. It never is, I said. But I'm not letting you fight this alone. She pulled back just enough to look up at me. You might not have a choice. And then, the sound. A distant engine. Slow. Heavy. Approaching. The man's head snapped toward the door. They're early. My entire body turned to ice. She grabbed my face in her hands. Listen to me. If they come in here, do not say a word. Don't argue. Don't act brave. Just stay behind me. Behind you, I said. I'm not letting you. Please, she begged. Just this once. Listen. The warehouse lights flickered as the engine cut off outside. Multiple car doors opened. Footsteps. Coming closer. The man positioned himself near the entrance, shoulders tense. She stood beside him. Not like a victim, but like someone preparing to face an old, familiar nightmare. I reached for her hand. She squeezed it once hard, then let go. The door handle moved. The metal groaned. My heartbeat drowned out every other sound. And as the door began to open, she whispered without turning around. Whatever happens, remember I loved you enough to try to let you go. The light from outside burst in, and the story ends here. Maybe someday, I'll write what happened next. Or maybe some truths aren't meant for Reddit.